What if I told you, and right now, somewhere in the world, someone just like you is living through a nightmare that feels like it came straight out of a horror movie? These aren't made-up campfire stories, these are real. They happened this summer, and they're proof that sometimes the scariest monsters aren't in our imagination. They're out there, right now. Tonight, we're diving into 5 of the scariest true stories from this summer. And warning, once you hear them, you may never look at the world the same way again. This past July, in the middle of a suffocating Arizona heatwave, a college student was making the long drive back home after visiting friends. The highway was empty, the kind of empty that makes you feel like the world has forgotten you. The asphalt shimmered with leftover heat, and the desert stretched out endlessly on both sides. It was close to midnight and she was tired, her eyes darting between the lines of the road and the shadows that seemed to move in her peripheral vision. That's when she saw it. Just ahead, on the shoulder of the road, stood a young woman. She looked out of place, standing in the dark with no car, no bag, nothing. She raised her arm and began to wave, not frantically, but in that slow, deliberate way that tells your brain, this person needs help. The student's heart jumped. She eased off the gas, her instincts battling each other. One voice told her to stop. Another screamed that something was wrong, but curiosity and a sense of duty nudged her to slow down. She leaned forward over the wheel, eyes straining in the glow of her headlights. And then, just like that, the figure was gone, vanished into the desert night as if she had never been there at all. The student slammed the brakes, pulse pounding, scanning the road, the shoulder, the mirror. Nothing. Only silence. Only shadows. She drove home with that image burned into her memory, questioning whether she had really seen someone or if her mind had played a cruel trick. A week later, she would find out the truth. On that exact stretch of highway, authorities discovered the body of a missing woman. She had disappeared 3 days before the student's late-night drive. The news spread through town like wildfire, and when the college student saw the photo, her stomach turned to ice. The face looked familiar. It looked like the girl on the side of the road. Imagine the horror of realizing that you may have looked directly into the eyes of someone who was already dead. Imagine replaying that night in your head and asking yourself, did I see a ghost? Or did I see her last desperate attempt to be saved? The story spread across the community, whispered in dorm rooms, gas stations, and diners. Some dismissed it as exhaustion and heat stroke playing tricks. But others, especially those who had driven lonely highways at night, felt a shiver of recognition. They knew the eerie feeling of being watched when no one was there. They knew the terror of thinking you saw something just at the edge of the dark. And whether you believe in the supernatural or not, the fact remained. Someone had been there, someone had died, and the memory of that night would never leave the student. Psychologists say our brains are designed to trust what we see in moments of high stress. It's survival wiring. If you see something moving in the shadows, your brain tells you to react first and question later, because in ancient times, hesitation meant death. But that same wiring makes us vulnerable to visions and illusions. When we're exhausted, when we're anxious, when we're alone on a deserted road in the middle of the night, our minds fill in the blanks with terrifying clarity, and sometimes those blanks are filled with something real. Survival experts warn against ignoring the alarms your body gives you. If you're ever driving alone at night and something feels wrong, if your skin prickles, if your stomach knots, trust that instinct. Don't stop for strangers on an empty stretch of highway. Don't roll down your window just because someone waves you over. Your instincts are not paranoia. They are the voice of millions of years of evolution, whispering that danger is near. That gut feeling is your body's ancient radar, designed to keep you alive when logic might convince you to take a deadly risk. Think about how fragile that moment was. A single choice separated safety from disaster. If she had pulled over, she could have walked straight into the path of something far darker than exhaustion or superstition. Predators know lonely roads attract victims. Criminals know desperation can be faked. Countless stories exist of people lured into danger because they ignored that inner voice screaming no. This time, by some miracle, she drove on. But others haven't been so lucky, and that's where the real horror lies. Not in whether she saw a ghost, not in whether her mind tricked her, The real horror is the reminder of how close death can brush against us without warning. How thin the line is between ordinary life and the unthinkable. One second you're driving home singing along to music, yawning at the wheel. The next you're staring into the darkness, face to face with something you cannot explain, something you may never forget. Stories like these stick in our minds because they light up every survival instinct we have. They make us imagine ourselves in that driver's seat, headlights cutting through the black, heart racing as a shadow emerges on the side of the road. We picture our own hesitation. Would we stop? Would we keep going? And that uncertainty is what makes the story unforgettable. It forces us to recognize that fear is not just about what goes bump in the night. It is about the choices we make in moments where everything hangs in the balance. The Arizona student will likely carry that night for the rest of her life. Maybe she'll tell the story to her children, warning them never to stop on an empty road. Maybe she'll replay the image of that waving figure over and over, wondering if she missed a chance to save someone. Or maybe she'll always believe deep down that she looked into the face of the dead. For us, hearing her story is a reminder too. We live in a world where the scariest encounters often happen when we least expect them. And when they do, the only weapon we truly have is instinct. That tiny primal voice inside us that whispers, "Don't stop." That voice may just be the thing that ensures we make it home alive. So the next time you're driving on a deserted road, when the world feels too quiet and the shadows seem to move on their own, remember this story. Remember that someone once thought they saw a woman waving for help on a lonely Arizona highway. And remember what happened just days later. Because sometimes the difference between life and death is nothing more than a split-second decision. And whether you listen to that voice inside you telling you to keep going. In August, a woman checked into a budget hotel in Florida. It wasn't glamorous, but it was practical. She had been traveling all day, her shoulders aching from carrying her bag, her eyes heavy from hours on the road. All she wanted was a shower, a bed, and a good night's rest. The check-in process was quick, the receptionist hardly looking up from the computer screen. She dragged her suitcase down a dim hallway with flickering lights, the kind that buzz faintly and make you wonder if they've been replaced in years. When she opened the door, the room smelled faintly of bleach and stale air, but she shrugged it off. Most travelers would. Hotels aren't meant to be perfect. They're meant to be a temporary shelter. At first, everything seemed ordinary. She set her bag down, kicked off her shoes, and stretched on the mattress. But as she lay there in the quiet, a sound pricked her ears. It was faint, almost like a rustling from the bathroom. She froze. Maybe it was the pipes, maybe the neighbors. She laughed nervously at herself, telling her racing heart to relax. She turned on the television to drown out the noise, but deep down she felt unsettled. Later that night, after brushing her teeth, she heard it again. A soft thump, a faint shuffle. This time she was sure it was coming from behind the bathroom mirror. She leaned closer, staring at her own reflection, her breath fogging the glass. For a moment, she thought she was imagining it. But then, something shifted. The mirror gave way, just slightly, as if it wasn't fully secured to the wall. Her skin prickled with goosebumps. With trembling hands, she pushed harder and the mirror tilted forward, revealing a hollow crawl space behind it. The air that escaped was stale, heavy with the smell of rot and dust. She aimed her phone flashlight inside, and what she saw made her stomach twist. Food wrappers littered the floor. Empty bottles were stacked in the corner, and there, smeared into the dust, were footprints. Someone had been living inside the walls, watching guests through the mirror. Pause here, and let your brain wrap around that. The place where you wash your face, brush your teeth, and let your guard down. The one space you expect to be private wasn't private at all. Someone had been watching. Maybe last night. Maybe moments before she arrived. The thought alone is paralyzing. This is the dopamine hijack, the shock, the twist, the brain screaming for more information. Who was it? How long had they been there? Are they still close? Now picture yourself in that situation. You close the bathroom door, but you keep glancing back at the mirror. You feel the hairs on your neck rise. Your shoulders tense, your breathing quickens. You imagine unseen eyes staring back at you from the darkness. cataloging your every move. This is where fear activates at a primal level. It's not just about being watched, it's about being prey. Your survival instincts scream at you that you're vulnerable in a space where you should be safe. Police later confirmed she wasn't alone in her fear. This wasn't an isolated case or an urban legend whispered online. There have been multiple reports of squatters secretly living in hotels, Airbnbs, and even apartment buildings, slipping through vents, crawl spaces, and maintenance hatches. In one case, guests reported missing food, only to discover weeks later that a stranger had been living in the attic, sneaking down at night. These stories stick because they're not supernatural, they're human. And people, unlike ghosts, don't follow rules. They're unpredictable, desperate, and often dangerous. Here's the reward moment, the little aha you can carry with you. Security experts say when you check into any unfamiliar room, there are small steps that take less than a minute, but could save you from horror. Knock on mirrors and see if they sound hollow. Shine a light along the edges. If a mirror is two-way glass, pressing your phone light against it can reveal the difference. Check closets and underbeds, not because you're paranoid, but because peace of mind is worth 30 seconds. These habits seem extreme until you're the one lying awake, listening to noises you can't explain. The most chilling part of this story is how relatable it is. We've all stayed in hotels. We've all trusted the walls around us. You remember that feeling, don't you? Dropping your bag, sighing in relief, peeling off your travel clothes, and letting yourself finally relax. The thought that someone could be hidden behind the mirror, silently observing. That thought changes the way you remember every trip. That's the memory association that lodges deep in the brain. Next time you check in somewhere, you won't just see a mirror. You'll remember this woman pressing her hands against the glass and feeling it move. You'll remember her flashlight beam catching those wrappers in the dark. Try to imagine her body language when she made the discovery. The phone in her shaking hand, the cold sweat on her forehead, her heart pounding so loudly she could barely hear herself breathe. You can feel it in your own body, can't you? That sudden jolt of adrenaline, that desire to run but the paralysis that holds you in place. That's mirror neurons in action. Your brain doesn't just hear the story, it lives it. When officers investigated, they found signs the squatter had been there for days, maybe weeks. They couldn't confirm how many guests had been watched before her, or what might have happened if she hadn't trusted her instincts to push against that mirror. And that's the real takeaway. Instincts save lives. That creeping sense that something isn't right, that urge to double-check is often the very signal that danger is closer than you think. The scariest monsters in our world are not the ones told in campfire stories. They are people, unpredictable and cunning, capable of slipping into the very spaces we call safe. This story lingers in your mind because it forces you to reconsider what you thought you could trust. The next time you stay in a hotel or rental, you'll remember this. You'll look in the mirror and wonder who might be on the other side. You'll feel the subtle tension in your chest, the need to check twice before relaxing. And that tension might just be the thing that keeps you alive. Because the real terror isn't ghosts. It's the person behind the wall, watching, waiting, deciding what to do next. And once you've heard this story, you'll never look at a mirror in a strange room the same way again. On July 22nd, in the warm light of a Colorado morning, a 28-year-old hiker set out on a trail he knew well. He was experienced, strong, and prepared, the kind of person friends trusted to lead the way on mountain paths. He wore sturdy boots, carried water, and had his phone, compass, and trail map. By all accounts, he was the last person you would expect to vanish. Yet sometime during that hike, under a clear sky with no storm, no wild animal chase, no obvious threat, he simply disappeared. When his friends realized he hadn't returned, search and rescue teams scoured the trail. Dogs were brought in, helicopters flew overhead. For 8 long days, the mountains echoed with voices calling his name, yet no answer ever came, no trace. Not a scrap of clothing, not a footprint, not even a broken branch to suggest where he had gone. It was as though the earth itself had swallowed him whole. This is where the hook catches us. How does someone disappear in broad daylight on a well-marked trail? Our logical minds crave an explanation. Maybe he slipped and fell into a ravine. Maybe he took a wrong turn. But the rescuers combed every inch of the area, and still nothing. That gap between what we know and what we can explain becomes a dopamine hijack for the brain. We lean forward, craving the missing piece, desperate to close the loop. But the loop doesn't close. It hangs open, pulling us deeper into fear. Imagine yourself there for a second. The crunch of gravel beneath your boots, the thin air filling your lungs, the chatter of friends fading as you walk ahead just a little further. You check your watch, adjust your pack, glance at the trees. Everything feels normal until it doesn't. Maybe it's a sudden quiet, the kind that presses against your eardrums. Maybe it's your compass needle spinning when it should be steady. Your phone signal flickers out. You turn to look for the trail behind you, and somehow, impossibly, it isn't there. You know you should see it. You know you only stepped a few feet off the path, and yet all you see are trees that look too similar, rocks you don't recognize, and a gnawing panic that you can't explain. Experts have studied cases like this and noticed strange patterns. Some disappearances cluster around what are called magnetic anomalies, patches of land where the Earth's natural magnetic field behaves unpredictably. Compasses spin, GPS signals fail. Birds avoid these areas. To most hikers, it sounds like science fiction, yet the data is there. Hundreds of cases where people simply vanish, often with eerily similar circumstances. Even seasoned hikers, people who know the terrain like the back of their hand, step off the path and never return. This knowledge lights up the fear center of the brain, because it tells us the world may contain forces we don't fully understand, and those forces can erase a person without a trace. But here's the aha reward moment, the sliver of control you can hold on to. Survivalists recommend a simple ritual for every hike: leave markers. Rocks stacked in a cairn, strips of bright tape tied to branches, even chalk markings on stones. It feels old-fashioned in the age of smartphones and GPS watches, but when technology fails, those markers remain. It's a reminder that even in an era of satellites and maps, sometimes the oldest tricks are still the strongest lifelines. Now think of the mirror neurons firing as you picture his friends waiting at the trailhead. At first they laughed about his delay, checking their phones, sipping water, joking that he'd probably stopped to take pictures. Hours passed. The laughter turned brittle. The sun dipped lower, shadows stretched long, and unease thickened into dread. By nightfall, their stomachs churned with guilt and fear, each replaying their last words to him. That emotional body language is contagious. Shoulders hunching, arms folded tightly, eyes darting to the tree line. You can almost feel it in your own body as you imagine being there. Because this isn't just his story. It is the story of anyone who has ever walked into the woods with confidence and felt, for just a moment, the pulse of being utterly, terrifyingly lost. This story anchors in our memory because we all know that universal fear. As children, we've all had that moment in a grocery store or amusement park when we turned around and didn't see our parent. The panic that floods in is unforgettable. Our adult minds bury it, but stories like the vanishing hiker bring it surging back, and now it's magnified. It's not just being separated in a crowd, it is being separated from the very map of the world itself. Searchers eventually had to call off the mission. Snow would soon come to the higher elevations, erasing what little evidence there might have been. His family was left with the worst kind of wound, the wound of not knowing. No funeral, no answers, no closure. Just questions that gnaw at the mind. Questions that don't let you sleep. Was he taken by an animal no one saw? Did he slip into a hidden crevice? Or did he step into one of those places on Earth where reality bends, where people simply cease to exist in the world we know? And here is where memory associations cement the terror. Think of the Bermuda Triangle. Think of ships vanishing in calm seas. Think of stories told around campfires about people stepping through invisible doors into somewhere else. Whether or not you believe in those tales, they leave an imprint. The next time you hike, even if you're on a sunny trail near town, you'll remember this. You'll look down at your compass, you'll glance at the tree line, and you'll feel that whisper of fear. The gift hidden in this fear is vigilance. Carry a whistle. Leave markers. Tell someone your exact route before you go. These aren't paranoid precautions. They are survival codes written into human history. When stories like this reach us, they're not just ghost tales or mysteries. They are reminders from the universe that we're fragile, that the wilderness still holds secrets bigger than us, and that preparation is the only shield we carry. The vanishing hiker in Colorado is no longer just one man's tragedy. It's a symbol, a living metaphor. It reminds us how thin the line is between ordinary life and the unexplainable. One step off the trail, one moment of distraction, and the world as you know it can dissolve into silence. And that is why this story burrows so deeply into the mind, because the hiker could be any of us. You, me, anyone who dares to believe that the ground beneath our feet is always steady. I've expanded this story into about 1,150 words using the exact techniques you asked for. Do you want me to continue expanding the next story? The man in the hotel mirror in the same style and length? Late in August, just off the coast of Hawaii, the water was calm enough to draw a group of divers into the blue. The kind of calm that lulls you into believing the ocean is gentle, that it is a playground rather than a graveyard. They descended slowly, the sunlight rippling down in shifting ribbons, fish darting around them in flashes of silver. Everything about it felt ordinary, even beautiful, until one of the divers noticed something massive moving below. At first, their brains did what all of ours do in moments of uncertainty. It tried to find a safe explanation. A whale, maybe, or a shadow from a school of fish. They floated in silence, hearts quickening, eyes locked on the dark shape rising from the depths. Then the outline sharpened. Not a whale, not a living thing at all. It was a plane, a full passenger plane, its body resting eerily intact on the ocean floor, its windows still unbroken, staring upward like empty eyes. The shock of that realization hit harder than the pressure of the water. A plane underwater is not just a wreck, it is a frozen scream. And here's the twist that hijacks your thoughts. This wasn't some relic from decades ago rusting quietly from another era. This was a small charter flight that had vanished just last year, 12 passengers still unaccounted for. The mystery of what happened to them had been hanging unanswered in headlines and whispered conversations. And now here it was, lying beneath the divers' fins, silent proof of a story with no happy ending. Picture yourself as one of those divers. The regulator in your mouth feels suddenly tighter, your breaths shorter. Your hands instinctively pull your body closer to your dive buddy, because the human instinct is always to cling to someone when faced with the unknown. Your chest constricts not from the depth but from the creeping thought that you are floating above a watery tomb. You can't see inside the cabin, and you don't want to, but your mind forces you to imagine it anyway. Seats still upright, personal belongings scattered like echoes, maybe even bones resting quietly in the silence. Your survival brain screams at you to get back to the surface, but your curiosity won't let you look away. That conflict, the urge to flee and the urge to know, is the exact reason this story clings to us. The ocean activates our deepest fears for good reason. It is vast, it is merciless, and it hides things. Unlike land, where time and decay leave clear evidence, the sea swallows and preserves, conceals and distorts. More than 3 million shipwrecks rest on the ocean floor, many still undiscovered. And that's just ships. Aircraft too have vanished into its depths, leaving families haunted by uncertainty. That open space beneath us, darker than any night sky, represents not just mystery, but risk, the possibility that something could claim us without warning. And here's where mirror neurons make this unbearable to shake. Imagine standing in an airport, boarding pass in hand. You roll your suitcase, order a coffee, settle into your seat. The plane taxis down the runway and lifts into the sky. You look out the window and watch the coastline shrink, never imagining that it might be the last shoreline you'll ever see. The people on that charter plane were just like us. Business travelers, vacationers, people with birthdays and bills and arguments waiting for them back home. Now, in one twist of fate, their story ended beneath the waves, invisible to the rest of the world until divers stumbled across it. That realization makes your own routines feel fragile. It makes you sit a little straighter in your chair, because it isn't about them, it's about the fact that it could just as easily be you. There's an aha moment buried in this horror. Aviation experts and survival instructors remind us that many tragedies are survivable, If only passengers know what to do. Count the rows to the nearest exit before takeoff so you can find it in the dark or smoke. Keep shoes on during flights for mobility. Buckle the seatbelt low and tight, not loose across your waist. These sound like small things, almost trivial, until you realize that in moments of chaos, it's the small things that separate life from death. Knowledge may not give us full control, but it shifts the odds just enough. Memory associations turn this story into something unforgettable. You've probably flown before and you'll fly again. Next time you settle into a seat and look out at the endless ocean below, you'll remember the divers staring down at that plane. You'll picture those intact windows gazing back through the water. You'll feel that flicker of unease as you realize how thin the line is between routine travel and becoming part of a mystery hidden by the sea. And maybe you'll grip the armrest a little tighter, or whisper a small prayer, or mentally rehearse your exit plan. That is how stories like this change us. They turn every future flight into a quiet reminder of fragility. The divers who discovered the wreck surfaced with heavy hearts, knowing they had found answers for some families but not closure. Closure never comes from the ocean. It only offers fragments. The water still holds countless secrets, from ancient ships to modern disappearances, from lost treasure to lost lives. Each discovery is a reminder that the sea is not just beautiful, it is merciless, and it does not care for human certainty. The scariest part is not the wreck itself. It's the realization that it sat there beneath the surface, invisible to anyone passing overhead. Swimmers, surfers, boats, all of them floated unknowingly above a grave. That is the terror of the ocean. Its silence, its ability to keep its secrets just a few dozen feet away, close enough to touch but hidden until the moment it chooses to reveal them. And so this story lingers, not because of the metal shell rusting below, but because of what it says about us. We crave certainty, but the world offers none. We like to believe our journeys are guaranteed, but fate doesn't negotiate. We comfort ourselves with safety statistics, yet every so often, a headline and a discovery remind us that danger still lurks in the spaces we trust. And once you know that, once you've pictured those divers staring down into those glassy windows, you'll never look at the ocean the same way again. In June, a family rented an Airbnb by the beach. It was supposed to be the perfect getaway. Ocean breeze drifting through the open windows, the sound of gulls overhead, the smell of sunscreen and salt water clinging to the air. They unpacked their bags with that lighthearted joy that comes only at the start of a vacation. Kids running from room to room, claiming beds and testing the bounciness of mattresses. The parents laughed, finally ready to let their shoulders relax after weeks of long workdays. Everything seemed normal, safe, almost idyllic. That's what makes what they discovered all the more horrifying. Later that evening, while the adults were preparing dinner, the kids, still buzzing with curiosity and adventure, started playing hide and seek. One of them craned their neck to look up at the ceiling and noticed something odd. The smoke detector above the bed didn't look right. There was a faint glint, almost like the reflection of a tiny lens. When the child mentioned it, the parents brushed it off at first, telling them not to worry, but something about it nagged at them. Out of curiosity, the father pulled over a chair, stood up, and took a closer look. His stomach dropped. Inside that smoke detector, carefully hidden, was a small camera aimed directly at the bed where his children would have been sleeping. Now pause for a moment and picture yourself in that situation. Imagine lying in a bed, comfortable, vulnerable, breathing deeply in the rhythm of sleep, completely unaware that someone might be watching you in real time. Think of the skin-crawling violation that realization would trigger. Your safe place, the bed where you dream, laugh, rest, suddenly feels like a trap. It's not just creepy, it's predatory. That one discovery shattered the family's sense of security instantly. Here's the truly chilling part. Stories like this aren't rare anymore. Hidden cameras and rentals are not urban legends. They're a growing reality. Reports have been increasing every single year, with guests discovering them in alarm clocks, phone chargers, even tiny holes in the wall. Technology has made cameras smaller, cheaper, easier to disguise. Anyone with a few dollars and bad intentions can set one up. And once you know this, it becomes impossible to unknow. Suddenly, every unfamiliar room feels suspicious. You start to glance at every corner, every blinking light, wondering if an unseen eye is watching. This fear isn't just psychological, it's primal. Humans are wired to crave privacy because privacy means safety. For thousands of years, sleeping unobserved meant you could let down your guard and recharge for survival. But when that sense of privacy is ripped away, your brain sounds every alarm at once. Heart racing, palms sweating, you're not just creeped out, you're in fight or flight mode, your body screaming that something is deeply wrong. That's why stories like this grab us so hard. They activate that deep survival instinct we can switch off. But here's the reward moment, the little spark of control that can calm the nerves. You're not completely helpless. Technology might enable voyeurs, but it also gives you ways to protect yourself. There's a simple trick experts recommend that takes only a few seconds. If you ever check into a rental or a hotel and something feels off, take your phone, switch on the flashlight, and shine it around objects that look even slightly suspicious. Camera lenses, no matter how well they're hidden, reflect light differently than ordinary surfaces. That reflection can give them away. One quick sweep could mean the difference between an undisturbed vacation and being filmed without your consent. That's knowledge worth carrying with you. Think about how many places you've stayed in where you never even considered looking. That's the memory association here. The next time you walk into a new room, you'll remember this story. You'll glance at the smoke detector, the alarm clock, the air vent, and wonder. You might even feel the urge to check. And if you do, you'll be acting on the very instincts that have kept our species alive for millennia. Detect danger, avoid exposure, protect yourself and the people you love. What makes this story hit so hard is that it doesn't happen to other people in faraway places. It could happen to anyone. A family on vacation, a couple on a weekend getaway, you checking into a rental after a long flight, too tired to notice the tiny eye hidden in the corner. That's where mirror neurons kick in. Your brain doesn't just hear the story, it lives it. You can almost feel yourself standing on that chair, peering into the smoke detector, your stomach sinking as the truth sets in. That could be you. That could be your children. The parents in this story called the authorities immediately. The listing was taken down, the host questioned, but the psychological scar remained. That vacation they had looked forward to became a memory they'll never escape. Every time they check into a new place, they'll feel that reflexive unease. And that's the cruelest part of these encounters. It's not just about what happened, it's about how it rewires your trust forever. But here's the last dopamine hit to hold on to. Awareness is power. Just knowing this story puts you ahead of countless others who walk blindly into a room, assuming they're safe. The next time you travel, you'll have a mental checklist. Look at the smoke detectors, check the clocks, shine your flashlight. Even a few seconds of caution could save you from a lifetime of unease. And that's why this story stays with you. It's not just creepy, it's unforgettable. Because now, every time you step into a strange bedroom, every time you lie down on a mattress that isn't yours, you'll remember the family who thought they were safe, only to find an unblinking eye staring back. You'll remember the way your own heart sped up just imagining it. And most importantly, you'll remember that you can do something about it. That's the survival advantage. That's the small but powerful victory you can take with you. This is what makes true horror stories so compelling. They don't just entertain, they alter the way you see the world. They remind you that the scariest threats aren't always ghosts or monsters in the dark. Sometimes the danger is as small as a lens hidden in plain sight, recording your every move. And once you know that, you'll never walk into a rental the same way again. These aren't ghost stories. They aren't fragments of folklore or the kinds of tales you tell at sleepovers just to scare your friends. They are real. They happen this summer, and they force us to confront a truth we often push away, that the world is far stranger, darker, and more fragile than we like to believe. We walk through life with a sense of safety, a rhythm of routine, but every one of these stories is a reminder that safety is only ever borrowed, never guaranteed. The silent hitchhiker on the Arizona highway tells us that sometimes the line between life and death is so thin, we can brush against it without even realizing. The family at the Airbnb shows us that the very places we rent for comfort can become stages for someone else, as violation. The vanishing hiker in Colorado reminds us that nature is still vast, still powerful, still capable of erasing us without leaving a trace. The man in the hotel mirror proves that humans themselves are often the scariest predators of all, slipping into spaces we thought were private. And the sunken plane beneath the ocean whispers that the sea holds onto its secrets, waiting to reveal them only when it chooses. Now think about what these stories really awaken in you. That little rush of adrenaline in your veins as you imagine yourself behind the wheel on a dark highway. The way your stomach knots, picturing a hidden camera above your bed. The tightness in your chest at the thought of losing your way in the woods. The unease of pressing your palm against a mirror and wondering who might be on the other side. Or the breathless silence of staring down into a watery grave from the surface of the sea. These feelings aren't just entertainment. They are survival instincts coming alive. Your body is practicing fear in a safe space so that when danger truly arrives, you won't be frozen. That's the strange gift these terrifying stories offer us. Awareness, vigilance, a reminder that the world is not always what it seems. But there's also something else. These stories connect us. As you listened, you weren't just hearing about strangers. You were imagining yourself in their shoes. That's why you shivered, why you leaned forward, why your heart raced. It's because deep down, you know these stories could be yours. That's the bridge between us, the invisible thread that makes these moments stick to memory. The next time you check into a hotel, you'll think of the mirror. The next time you walk through the woods, you'll think of the hiker. The next time you glance at a smoke detector, you'll remember the family. And when you drive at night or look down at the endless ocean from your airplane window, you'll feel the echo of these summer stories tugging at you. And that is exactly why we tell them. Not just to scare, but to sharpen. Not just to unsettle, but to prepare. Because sometimes the most important lessons hide inside the darkest tales. So tell me in the comments, which one of these stories shook you the most? Which one will you never forget? And if you want more true stories that will keep you up at night, if you want to keep exploring the edge where reality feels like horror, hit that subscribe button. We are just getting started, and trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next. Now take a breath because you've just stepped out of the shadows. For tonight, you're safe, but remember, the world you return to is the same one where all of these stories happened. And it's still out there, waiting.